everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host, Anthony Gamer, and I'm Larry the Lion. And I'm Squatchy, but you can call me Turbot. Turbot. And in today's episode, we're going to have part 4 of the Atari 5200 prototypes. I got a question. What's that? What kind of a name is Turbot? It's a kind of a traditional name in Scandinavia. I thought your name was Squatchy. No, Squatchy is the nickname that Red's wife gave me. My real name is Turbot. Oh, okay. Anyway, so this will be our final episode in the series about the Atari 5200. Throughout this unit, I've gained a new appreciation for the Atari 5200. Yeah, me too. I think if they had just been able to fix the hardware issues, they may have actually been able to have it be one of the greatest video games systems in history. Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, the Tramiel takeover kind of made that not happen. So we can just think about what might have been. Exactly, and that's why we have these series of videos about the prototypes. If you've seen the previous 3, you know that these prototypes are just outstanding. Even the ones that have no collision detection, we get a good idea of what could have been. So without further ado, let's get into the games. You guys ready? Oh yeah, I'm ready whenever you are. How about you, I almost said Squatchy, Turbot. Yeah, I'm ready to get started, so let's talk about the games. All right, then.
And our first game for today is Final Legacy from Atari. It was supposed to be released in 1984, and it was programmed by Dan Oliver, who did the programming and the graphics. Brad Fuller did the audio, and Chris Horseman did the game design. All right, Turbot, thank you. Now, in this game, the year is 2051. 50 years after the world was nearly destroyed by nuclear war, the threat has returned. World leaders have begun to intercept radio signals from ancient computer systems in the long, silent dead zone. Mankind may have ended the war, but the computers are intent on finishing what they began 50 years ago. You are captain of the Legacy, a futuristic battleship built to combat this new evil. Your mission is to destroy all remaining missile sites and save the world from a second nuclear war. All right, now in this game, you are taking on the role as admiral of this ship called the Legacy, and you have 3 different types of battles that you do. You have ship against ship, or torpedo screen. You fight 3 types of ship: warships, hunter ships, and intelligence ships. Then you have where you have sea to land, where you're trying to destroy these missile silos. Then you have sea to air, in which you are trying to fire at one of these killer satellites that are coming after you. It's a really great game, and for those of you that are really big into war simulation games, this is one you've got to try. Yeah, what I like about it, it's almost like playing a movie. It's really hard to miss those torpedoes that come flying at you. It sure is, I know. And the best part, this game seems like it's totally complete. So if you are able to download it and try it out, you are not going to regret. This game is really awesome, and it's just a shame that this game, along with many others, were not released. One thing I'd like to point out for some of you that are watching this video in this series for the first time is that the big reason all of these prototypes for the 5200 were not released is because the Tramiel takeover in 83 and 84. And during that time period, the 5200 system and 5200 games were all stopped because they wanted to make it Atari a computer company. So that is the main reason why all of these games were on this list, just to let you know in case you hadn't seen the other 3 videos. Oh, thank you, Turbot. Oh, you're welcome.
And next on the list we have Milky. This was to be released by Atari, and it was going to be released in 1984, and it was programmed by Stephen R. Crandall. Gary Johnson did the graphics, and Brad Fuller did the audio.
Now, many of you already know that Millipede is a sequel to Centipede, which was a big hit. And actually, Atari thought it was going to be a big hit too, because they planned on putting it out for all their game systems, for the 2600, 5200, the Atari 8, and the 7800, but it was only released for the 2600 and the computer version. Now, this game is pretty much the same as before. You're shooting at them little critters on there. It's really a game that you got to play with the trackball, because it really just doesn't seem to work out too good there with the what's that thing called that you use? The joystick, yeah. But so if you have played this game, give it a try. And our next game is Track and Field. This was to be released from Atari in 1984 and was programmed by Bob Merrill.
Hey, didn't we discuss this in a previous episode?
No, you're thinking of the track and field that was released for the Atari 2600.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the one that had the joystick.
Yep, the special track and field joystick, correct. Now, had this game been released, it probably would have had its own joystick as well. What a lot of people don't realize, or may have forgotten,
Or in other words, what you're saying is you didn't know.
exactly, was that this was actually a port of an arcade game. Alright, so you take part in several different events, and Olympic-style events here, like hurdles, high jump, all kinds of fun stuff. Now, the thing that's interesting about this game, which makes it very different than like Activision Decathlon, is you have to qualify for each event before you can go on to the next one. So it's like do or die, more or less. Now, as much as I loved the 2600 version, I really did, even though I couldn't get the controller to work that I bought. This version is just amazing. The improvements on it are just really obvious when you play the game, and as you're watching it, you can see that they improved quite a bit from the 2600 port. Now, according to some people that I know that have this cartridge of the prototype on their 5200, they say that the controller, the infamous 5200 controller that doesn't return to center, actually works really well with this game. As I do not have a 5200 myself, I can't tell you either way, but several people swear by it. All the games on this list are pretty sad that, they weren't released, but this one has to be one of the biggest disappointments, period, because this is a heck of a game, whether you played the 2600 version or the arcade or even the NES version. This is probably one of the best ports of that arcade game that you're going to find anywhere, and it's just a shame that it wasn't released.
But like many of the prototypes on this list and on the previous, you can find a fully functioning ROM of it at AtariAge.com and other places online.
That's right, Larry. As you pointed out, the game is fully functional, and as far as I can tell, you can have 1 to 2 players. So if you get a chance to check this out, whether you have a working 5200 or if you play your 5200 games on an emulator, give this game a try. You will not be disappointed. And next on the list today, we have probably what Anthony calls his favorite game on today's episode. Oh, it is for sure. And that is Zari Arena. It was to be released by Atari in 1983, and it was programmed by John Seegers, and Courtney Granner did the graphics. Now, I'll explain to you why I love this game so much. It is just so much fun. I mean, it is just so imaginative. The colors are great. The music is great. The game itself is just so, just so on the edge of your seat fun. I really can't find another way to describe this game other than wow. Now, some people have said that this game is actually a breakout or super breakout in reverse, but there's a lot more to it than just that. You're in a competition with an opponent or even with the computer, and you're trying to stop these Zaris from knocking out your brick wall. Now, you have several things you can do to stop them. You can catch them and send them back at your opponent's wall. You can blow them up, like you see, or sometimes if your wall starts to get in really bad shape, you can actually use a fire extinguisher to give yourself a slight advantage for the moment. Now, one of the things I will say about this game is it's very unique for the 5200 in the fact that it was not an arcade port. As far as I know, it was totally an original game, which would have made it stand out amongst the other 5200 games, as a lot of them were actually arcade ports. Now, around this time, a lot of people were starting to play games on their own, and I understand that. But this is one of those games you will want to play with someone else, as the game gets really competitive and high-paced. As you can see, look at that. This is we're on the 3rd round, and just look at those things going all over the place. Really, honestly, it's a shame that this wasn't released because a lot of the fans are missing out on a really highly competitive, action-packed, edge-of-your-seat game, which is too bad. But the good news is, of course, that the ROM is available all over the internet, especially at AtariAge.com, so check this game out and have the time of your life with it. And next on our list, it's dangerous, it's devious, it's Xevious. This was to be released in 1984, also by Atari, and it was programmed by Jim Huther and graphics by Alan Murphy. Now, what made this game unique is that it was the first of its kind, a scrolling space shooter. Before that, a lot of the games were fixed space shooters like Galaga or Space Invaders, but this one took on a whole new concept. The game itself was pretty successful and pretty much has been ported out several times since then. Unfortunately, the main version of it that most people think of as far as the early ports has to be the 2600 version, which was okay. The problem is that you actually need two buttons to play this game, as you are shooting things in the air and on the ground, which is kind of hard to do with one button. So therefore, on the 2600 version, they just drop bombs and shoot at the same time.
Yeah, that's too bad. As you can see, the graphics were pretty cool for their time period. This version has to be one of the ones that's pretty much the closest to the arcade that you were going to be able to get. And it's just too bad that it wasn't able to be released back in the day, as it probably would have been as big of a hit, if not bigger than the arcade game was.
Next on the list would have been Tempest, but we're not going to discuss that.
Why is that?
Although Tempest was technically a prototype for the Atari 5200, as at the time it wasn't completed or released, and the prototype we had was actually really incomplete, as it didn't even have any collision detection. And remember when we were playing that and you kept shooting and nothing happened? Yeah, you should have told me about that before we did it. Anyway, as I said in a previous episode, the game has been finished and is completed. And if you have a working 5200, you can go to AtariAge.com and purchase the fully functional Atari 5200 version of Tempest.
And our final game for today is Stargate. This was to be released in 1984 from Atari and was programmed by Steve Baker.
Now, many of you probably remember this game by its regular name, that being Defender 2.
Exactly. Now, Defender, of course, was a big hit. Every port of it was pretty good. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to do a episode of AVP, Arcade versus Port, comparing the different versions of Defender Part 1, or just Defender. One thing I like about this game is it keeps all the original elements that you loved about Defender and just kind of improves upon them. Exactly. One of the things you gotta love in this is the Stargates themselves. When you go into them, it's kind of like a hyperspace. But one of the problems, just like they were in the arcade game, is you gotta be a little bit careful about where you come out when you go into one of them things, or when you go into the hyperspace, because you never know where you're gonna come out. Oh, that's for sure. I'll be honest, guys, what I like best about this game is that they kept the vector graphics. As much as I loved the Atari 2600 port of Defender, it was pretty much impossible at that time to simulate the vector graphics on the 2600, but they did a pretty good job of rendering them on this particular port of Defender 2, or of course, as I said, Stargate. So, my only big complaint, I think, is that there's so much stuff going on a small screen. But, honestly, if you enjoyed the arcade Defender 2 and you enjoyed Defender, this is definitely the game for you.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I really hope you all enjoyed it. I sure did. Yeah, me too. And if you did, you know what to do. Give us a great big thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when we upload new episodes. Yeah, and please share these videos with your friends and family.
In our next episode, by request from my daughter Joanna, we are going to have games based on the long-running anime and manga series Lupin the Third, so you will not want to miss that.
Well, until next time, I am Anthony Gamer, and I'm Larry the Lion. And I am Turbot the Squatchy. So now you're Turbot the Squatchy. Yeah, something like that. And we will see you all in the next episode. Until then, be safe, be healthy, and take care of each other. Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye, everyone.